Perhaps my favorite deck of the new Lord of the Rings Universes Beyond series is the Food and Fellowship deck, led by Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, and Sam, Loyal Attendant. This deck focuses on utilizing food tokens for value. We aim to do combat damage while using the life gain from the food tokens as a means to burn our opponents and get additional value. I've put together a deck that looks to take the strategy and refine it to a point where I think it'll be far more consistent and fun while still looking to retain as much flavor from the original set as possible. Let's have a look-see at our two commanders. Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, is a 1/3 halfling scout for 1 white and 1 black mana. He has Vigilance. Whenever Frodo attacks, if you've gained 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then, if Frodo is your ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. Frodo is going to be our ring bearer most games as his abilities synergize the most with the ring tempt mechanic. Our partner commander, Sam, Loyal Attendant, is a 2/4 halfling peasant for 1 generic, 1 green, and 1 white mana. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you create a food token. For reference, food tokens are artifact tokens with the ability pay 2 mana of any color, tap and sacrifice this artifact, gain 3 life. He also has the static ability where activated abilities of foods you control cost 1 generic mana less to activate. These two commanders play off one another rather well. Sam creates a food token each combat, which you can then sacrifice paying 1 mana to gain 3 life. This will both buffer our life total as well as trigger Frodo's ability, giving us a ring tempt trigger. The ring is an emblem we gain whenever we are first tempted by the ring. It gains abilities from the top of the list to the bottom, and it retains those for the remainder of the game. The ring can tempt you even if you do not control a creature, but if you do control a creature, you must choose that creature to serve as your ring bearer. Each player can only have 1 ring emblem and 1 ring bearer at a time. This deck will be doing 2 things. Our primary strategy is to gain food tokens and utilize the synergies that they have with the rest of our deck to gain additional value. Our secondary strategy is largely combat centric. We have a few creatures in the deck that will be there to attack and win through either combat damage or through abilities that trigger upon attacking. Let's begin with Second Breakfast, shall we? We have a number of cards in the deck that produce food tokens, and we want to generate as many as possible to keep our tummies full and our board state strong. Academy Manufactor is one of the few rare flavor fails that this deck has to run, giving us a small replacement effect where, wherever we create a food, a treasure, or a clue token, we will instead create one of each. Our food tokens will also generate as treasures, which can then in turn be used as additional mana ramp. Our treasure tokens will also generate as food, giving us a nice snack as we develop our board state. We really will only be using clue tokens if we are desperate for card draw or if we need sack fodder for some of our other cards, but otherwise they're just happy to be here. Butterbur, Bree Innkeeper, generates us a food token if we don't have one at the beginning of our end step. It is possible that this ability will not be used often given how much food I anticipate we will have in play at any given time, but I'd rather have the ability available and not need it than need it and not have it. Farmer Cotton is a 1/1 for 1 green and 1 white with an additional cost of X. When he enters the battlefield, you create X 1/1 white halfling tokens and X food tokens. This is a tremendous token generator, and it's one of the cards that I like to hold back until we can get a ton of mana online and then dump a ton of mana into that X cost. Gilded Goose has an ETB to create a food token, and you can then pay 2 mana and tap it to create another food token. You can also tap it and sacrifice a food token to generate 1 mana of any color. This is a bit of a thematic Birds of Paradise who is also in the deck that I love for the flavor and the mechanics. Guillaume, Master Chef, has traveled through the multiverse to help feed our Hobbit army, creating a food token for each non-token creature we had enter the battlefield this turn. We can also pay 1 mana, sacrifice a food token to give a target creature indestructible until the end of turn. It's a nice bit of protection. Mariadoc Brandybook gives us a food token whenever we attack with our halflings. Given that the majority of our creatures are halfling hobbitses, we are going to be getting those extra snacks. Peregrine Took is also pretty fun, giving us an extra food token whenever we generate a token of any kind. We can also sacrifice 3 food tokens to draw a card. This gives additional utility to our food token production, and it combos nicely with the aforementioned Farmer Cotton. Pippin, Warden of Isengard, creates a food token and lets us sacrifice 4 food tokens to give a somewhat overrun-like ability, giving our board state +3/+3 and haste until the end of turn. Samwise Gamgee gives us a food token whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield. We can also sacrifice 3 food tokens to return target historic card from our graveyard to our hands, giving us a nice recursion ability that hits just about every named creature in this deck. This is also part of a win con that we will discuss much later on. Savvy Hunter creates a food token on attacking and blocking, and similar to Peregrine Took, we can sacrifice food tokens to draw a card. It's a bit better on the conversion from food tokens to card draw, but I'd rather have both in the deck. Tireless Provisioner has a landfall ability that lets us choose either a food or a treasure token whenever we play a land. Should Academy Manufacturer be in play, this actually will let us choose all of the above and get a clue token, but this is an excellent passive means to produce food tokens. Treebeard is also in here, and is in some aspects a win condition. He has Trample and Ward 2, making him a threat and a challenge to remove, and he comes in with 2 food tokens. Whenever you gain life, you can put that many +1/+1 counters onto a target halfling or tree folk, meaning when you use the food for life gain, you actually get 3 counters to put onto a creature. If you go ham with food token sacrifice, you can actually build up Treebeard to be a tremendous attack force and a dangerous threat to swing in with. Revive the Shire is a pretty simple recursion and it generates a food token. Of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit is a fun little saga, giving us a few food generation triggers and then ending with creating a hobbit where each plate of food that we've got. Finally, we did have to include the Shire in here, as a deck that involves this many hobbits and food tokens better have, or I've disserviced the entire Lord of the Rings fandom. It creates a food, and given how many of our creatures are legendary, it will most certainly enter play untapped. We also have a few cards that will utilize the food tokens for other things than life gain. Banquet Guests I've grown to really love as it comes in having an X cost, but it also has affinity for foods, meaning that cost can largely be paid for just by having foods in play. That X cost actually converts into getting it twice as many +1/+1 counters, meaning something as simple as 5 foods being in play will actually make this a 10/10. It also has Trample, making it super valuable to make it huge. You can also pay 2 and sacrifice a food to give it indestructible until the end of turn. This can be a huge threat to life totals, and it and Treebeard are 2 of our biggest beat sticks in the deck. Feasting Hobbit has Devour Food 3. When it enters the battlefield, we can sacrifice any number of food tokens, and then for each one we've sacrificed, we put 3 +1/+1 counters onto the Hobbit. Creatures that are smaller than the Feasting Hobbit can't block it. This will largely be unblockable most of the time, as we can generate tons of food to sacrifice to this, giving it a huge power boost. Jaheira, Friend of the Forest, gives all of our tokens, creature or non-creature tokens, the ability to tap for a green mana. This means that our food tokens can now tap for green, giving us a tremendous boost in our ramp. Lobelia, Defender of Bag End, doesn't specifically state that she uses food tokens, but we can utilize them to use her activated ability, potentially stealing an opponent's card that we can then cast for free, or we can burn each opponent for 2 and gain us 2 life. Mary, Warden of Isengard, also doesn't specifically state that it uses foods, but the artifact creature tokens that we create will also give us 1/1/1 white soldier token with lifelink each turn. Mirkwood Bats will ping each opponent for 1 life whenever we create a token or whenever we sacrifice a token, and with this in play we do actually stand to win the game by simply feasting on our tokens. Shire Sheriff lets us sacrifice a food token or any kind of token to exile a creature an opponent's controls until the Sheriff leaves play. This can be nice removal, and it's a bit cheaper to cast than most creature-based card removal. The Gaffer gives us card draw whenever we should have gained 3 life that turn. Food, conveniently enough, gives us 3 life, and so if we get food sacrifice on each turn, we can draw up to 3 cards for 1 turn cycle. Lastly, let's discuss some potential alternate win conditions for the deck. We can theoretically swing in with our big creatures, or we can use these sneaky little hobbitses to win. Frodo, Sauron's Bane, is an unassuming 1/2 for 1 white mana. This card brings back the evolving creature mechanic where you can pay 2 mana of any combination of white or black to make Frodo become a 2/3 halfling scout with lifelink. You can then pay 3 black mana to make him a halfling rogue with a nasty ability. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game if the ring has tempted you 4 or more times this game. Otherwise, the ring tempts you. This is a very easily achieved win condition, as we can utilize our Commander Frodo to tempt us those 4 times, then drop this, get through those abilities and get access to that win condition, and then take out an opponent 1 by 1. Gollum, Obsessed Stalker, is a 1/1 with Skulk, meaning he is unblockable by larger creatures. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent who Gollum has dealt damage to loses life equal to the number of life you've gained that turn. All that life gain from the food tokens can actually translate into substantial burn damage with Gollum and could even work as a win condition if we've gained enough life. Lastly, we do win a pretty top tier combo utilizing a card called Protean Hulk. When it dies, you can snag from your library creature cards whose total mana value is 6 or less. The creatures we will go for are as follows: Cauldron Familiar, Samwise Gamgee, Viscera Seer, and the Grand Abolisher. These 4 cards can win you a game if you need a quick and efficient close. The combo works as follows. You have Viscera Seer and Samwise in play. You get the Cauldron Familiar out, who creates a food token with Samwise's ability, and then pings the table for 1 life. You sacrifice the Cauldron Familiar to the Viscera Seer to scry 1. Kind of irrelevant, but then you use the food token that you had previously generated to return the familiar to the battlefield, ping each opponent again, you generate another food token, and then you can repeat this combo until the table is dead. The role of the Grand Abolisher in this scenario is to ensure that your opponents cannot respond to your combo or interact with you while you are going off. This combo is technically borrowed from the competitive scene, and you are most certainly welcome to exclude it from your deck in favor of 4 other cards, if you so wish, but that is entirely up to you. This is going to wrap up our look at the Food and Fellowship Commander deck. This was easily one of the most fun decks I've had the pleasure of building, and I really hope to continue working on it as time goes on. I hope you've enjoyed this deck as much as I've enjoyed building it. Let me know what herbs and spices you chose for your deck. Likes and shares are always welcome at our table, and feel free to subscribe if you're new here and want to keep up with all the fun decks we have in store. I hope to see you all next time. Thanks for stopping by.